What's up, everybody? Axe Wizard here, back with some more Cairn 2nd edition content. We're going to be looking at the Bonekeeper background today. So the Bonekeeper, you are a shepherd to the departed. You listen to the final whispers of the dead as they descend into the cold, unyielding earth. You know that to fully celebrate the gift of life, we must honor its finale as well. So that's the little blurb that was written for the Bonekeeper, and that sounds pretty metal, to be honest. That sounds pretty darn cool. The starting gear is you get a lantern with an oil can that has 6 uses. You get a wooden stake that does 1d6 damage, and you get some chains. You get 10 feet of chains. So that's kind of cool. So as with the other videos, I made 3 different characters, all Bonekeepers, to see options we have as far as gameplay and roleplay, and just to give you some ideas as to what you can make with this background. So the 3 characters I made are Rook, Barnaby, and Leth. So let's start off with Rook. Rook is obviously a Bonekeeper, and you can see he looks very prim and proper. He has a very statuesque physique. He's got soft skin, wavy hair, a chiseled face, formal speech, elegant clothing. His virtue is that he's disciplined, and his vice is that he's bitter. So he's bitter about something. So let's take a look at what I picked for his Bonekeeper stuff. So if you look at the Bonekeeper, they have 2 tables that you get to roll on, or you can do what I did and just pick whatever you want for the character you're trying to make. So the first table is, what did you take from the dead? For Rook, I picked number 1, the crow-shaped amulet. You can ask a question of the dead, but must add a fatigue each time. So to me, I'm instantly thinking of like that D&D spell where you can speak with dead and you can ask it a few questions. This is like you can ask a question of the dead, but you must add a fatigue for each question. So that could be really cool. So just based on that alone, I'm thinking, oh, this character could be searching for something, and he's having to interrogate the dead for perhaps long lost knowledge or something. That could be awesome. As far as a gameplay perspective, you know, if you're going through a dungeon and you find a skeleton, maybe you can ask it a question. Maybe you can ask it, like, what killed you? Was it a trap? Was it a big monster? Was it some ancient magic? Did you cross somebody? You know, there's all sorts of things that you can do with that, and I think that appeals to me from a gameplay perspective, and of course from a roleplay perspective, gives you quite a few options there as well. Now the next table is, what tool was invaluable to your work? For Rook, I chose number 4, incense. Perfect for rituals or to keep the flies at bay. It cools the blood. I picked that because, I don't know, maybe the player wants to, you know, when he speaks with the dead with his crow-shaped amulet, maybe he wants to make it all spooky and magical and mystery and I don't know. I think it just adds a little role play to it. It's not too big a deal what you pick for the second table, but I liked incense for this case. So let's take a look at what I did for his bond. So for Rook's bond, I picked number 7. You protect a long dormant family secret. Take 1/2 of an ancient key, a petty item. They say that if joined with its twin, it opens a gate through any door. So with that bond, I'm thinking that you have Rook, this statuesque, formal, handsome-looking man who can ask questions of the dead. I think maybe he's just trying to find the second half of this ancient key to open this gate and see what's on the other side. So I think that's a pretty cool bond. It's a pretty cool story hook, like a personal story hook. And it gives both the warden and the player room to sort of flesh out what they want that to be. And I think that's a pretty cool bond, and there's a lot that you can do with that, and I think that's pretty exciting, to be honest. I think that's really cool. So let's go ahead and run through the rest of Rook's character sheet here. So you can see I threw everything on here. He's got that 1/2 of an ancient key. He's got the lantern, oil can, stake, chains. He's got that crow-shaped amulet, and he has incense. I also put in the notes that he protects a long dormant family secret. He has that 1/2 of the ancient key. They say if I join it with its twin, I can open that gate through any door. And I have a crow-shaped amulet that allows me to ask questions of the dead at the cost of 1 fatigue per question. So cool, we got all that stuff on there. Let's talk about his stats. So since Rook is a pretty statuesque, you know, handsome person, I picture him to be more like a gallant knight that's not in armor. Maybe he's like a fallen knight or something. I rolled 3 stats and then I just assigned them where I wanted them. So I figured for him, I wanted him to be above average strength, so I gave him 12. I gave him a little bit below average dexterity because I wanted him to be more hardy and stand and fight. And then I gave him a higher willpower because I just envisioned constantly going through this quest of trying to find this other half of the ancient key and, you know, taking on those points of fatigue, asking questions of the dead. It's got to be a pretty big burden to bear, and you got to have a high willpower to keep trudging through that. So that's what I thought there. And then for his hit protection, I got real lucky and rolled a 5, which is, you know, the upper end of what you can roll starting out. And so that's pretty cool. For gold, he rolled 11 starting gold. So I think this character gives you a well-balanced starting stats, gives you a little bit of money if you want to perhaps get a different weapon or whatnot, and gives you that story hook, that purpose to jump in and actually role play a character. That's what I got for Rook. The only thing I would say is that I'm not too impressed with the Bonekeeper's combat capabilities because you only start out with that D6 wooden stake, which I think is kind of a lame weapon, to be honest. But, you know, you can always find new weapons. You can always buy new weapons. There's definite options out there. I mean, if you have 10 feet of chains, I mean, you could probably even wield that as a weapon. Like, honestly, if you were swinging a chain at me, I'd say it's probably bulky, so it takes up 2 hands, and maybe it does D8, so it doesn't do as much damage as a normal 2-handed weapon, which typically does D10 to D12. But, you know, that could be an option. You could be just whipping chains at people. That could be pretty metal. So next up, we have Barnaby, the Bonekeeper, obviously. So Barnaby is, he's got a very lanky physique. He's got tight skin. He's got long hair, especially in that glorious beard he's got. A pale face. His speech is stuttering, kind of like I do sometimes, except he stutters a lot more. He has filthy clothing. He doesn't really care for like his hygiene or doesn't clean it off that much. He's too busy, you know, doing stuff. His virtue is that he's cautious, and his vice is that he's nervous. So it's good to be cautious, but he's also nervous to the point of, like, you know, paralysis, where he sometimes won't necessarily act. So that's what he looks like. Obviously, Barnaby is pretty cool because he's rocking that massive beard, so he's got big points there for me. But let's talk about what I picked for his Bonekeeper stuff. So for Barnaby, when it asks, what did you take from the dead? I chose number 3, a blood pail, a bulky item from a local death cult. Empty its contents to summon a creature built from the items buried below. Bones, rocks, pottery, etc. It obeys your command, but if destroyed, you permanently lose 1d4 strength. It has 6 hit protection, 1 armor, 13 strength, 11 dexterity, and 4 willpower. It deals damage with shard fists, which deal d8 damage. To recharge it, you must fill the bucket with the blood of a dying warrior. So I picked this one because, you know, for a guy who's nervous and cautious, probably not very confrontational, I think it was fitting that he can have like a little blood golem from like Diablo or whatever that can just like smack people around. Like, I thought that was pretty cool. I guess not blood golem, maybe clay golem, bones, rocks, and pottery. So a golem. It's basically a golem, right? That's what I was thinking there, like a Diablo 2 necromancer or something, and you have like your little golem buddy with you. But since Cairn is a brutal world, you know, if that golem dies, you end up losing 1d4 strength permanently. Now, you can always regain that strength back. I mean, like, there's probably downtime procedures you could do. Maybe you could, I don't know, maybe Barnaby is like a fitness addict, and he's just like, I'm all about deadlifting and, like, summoning golems or whatever. So I don't know. That could be something cool. You can work that out with your warden, maybe. Also, it's kind of ironic deadlifting as a Bonekeeper. That's pretty metal. So I thought that was a cool thing to where you can potentially have this minion that also has its own turn, and you can do whatever you want it to do. 6 hit protection. That's pretty big. It doesn't specify if like you can level it up or, you know, make it stronger or enhance it in some way. But I assume like as the player grows, not necessarily in power, but gets more experienced, maybe they change some traits around. You know, maybe they've augmented some of their stats or whatnot, or they encounter some sort of dark dungeon or wizard or something, and maybe they find some way to permanently give a buff to that minion later in the game. That way it's a bit stronger. So if you're fighting like a big ass dragon or something like that, you're probably not going to summon this guy because it's just going to drop you, you know, 1d4 strength, and that's not going to be good if you're fighting for your life, you know. But for lower threat stuff, like this guy can just punch people for you and take their lunch money while you just sit there and hide in a corner. I mean, it works out great for Barnaby. So yeah, that was what Barnaby took from the dead. Now, what tool was invaluable to Barnaby's work? For him, I chose number 2, the sponge. Supposedly made from the remains of a rare sea creature. It never seems to dry out. So my thought process was, if I have this blood pail that I have to fill with the blood of a dying warrior to recharge my sweet golem, and I have a sponge that never seems to dry out, what if I soak that sponge in the blood of a dying warrior and I can just keep like getting that golem back? I don't know. Could be some interesting parallels there, but that seemed like those could go together. There could be some synergy there. But yeah, and plus, who doesn't want a sponge? I mean, sponge is awesome. Especially like a sponge of the remains of a rare sea creature. That sounds pretty awesome, especially for a Bonekeeper. So that's the Bonekeeper stuff for Barnaby. Let's take a look at what I picked for his bond. So for Barnaby, I chose bond number 1. You inherited a single gem, 500 gold pieces, cold and brittle, from a long-dead relative. It appeared with a warning. Squander your newfound riches, and a debt long thought forgotten would be called. So that's a pretty cool storyline. So you have this cautious, nervous guy who has this gem that's worth a fortune, 500 gold. Ooh. So he's nervous, he's cautious, he doesn't want to squander his newfound riches because a debt long thought forgotten could be called. Now, I don't know what that debt is. It doesn't specify. Could be up to you and the warden to figure out. Could be up to the warden's discretion entirely. But it probably won't be good. Because we're talking about a Bonekeeper, right? Maybe it's a debt from the dead or something. I don't know. Lots of interesting things you could do there. And so you've got, on one hand, you've got this gem that's worth tons of money. On the other hand, you could potentially have to repay a debt that you might not be able to repay, or it might throw your whole party into some sort of encounter or scenario or quest to do stuff. I mean, all sorts of things you could do with that. So I thought that was a pretty cool bond. So you potentially, if you can find somebody to fence this gem, you can get that money, but you might not want to sell it. If you do get that money, like what qualifies as squandering it? I mean, obviously Barnaby's probably not going to be hitting up brothels getting bitches, but I don't know. I mean, who determines what squandering is? If this long dead relative was like some medieval pimp, I mean, maybe he might think that's a good investment. I don't know. Does selling that gem and getting the money and then investing in like equipment and gear and items to further your endeavors, does that mean squandering? Or do you just simply have to hang on to this gem and not spend it? Lots of different ways that can be interpreted. So I thought that was a pretty good bond. So let's take a look at Barnaby's character sheet here. So let's go over his stats. So Barnaby, I envisioned would have less than average strength, so I put 8 there. The high roll I had was a 13. I figured I wanted him to be more dexterous because he's probably used to running away from everything because he's so cautious and nervous. So I wanted him to have a higher dexterity. So since 13 was the highest I rolled, I put that into dexterity, so he has above average dexterity. And then his willpower is 11, so he has slightly above average willpower, which, now that I think about it, since he's so cautious and nervous, I should have probably put 8 in willpower and maybe 11 in strength, but I don't know. That's the way the dice fell, baby. Don't worry about it. And for hit protection, I rolled 4, which is, you know, slightly above average, I guess. 3, I guess, would be average, maybe. I don't know. You got 6 options. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 4 is pretty good. You're on the upper half, so you're winning. And for his starting funds, he has 8 gold, but he does have that fatty gem worth 500 gold. So technically, he's got 508 gold, maybe. But you gotta find somebody to buy that, and then maybe they won't give you 500. Maybe they'll offer you 100, and you might be desperate enough to take it. I don't know. So for his inventory, he's got the standard lantern, oil can, stake, and chains. He's got that blood pail. It's bulky, so I actually have it taking up 2 slots on the inventory this time. I know in some of my previous background videos I kept messing that up, but I did it, baby. I got it. He's got that sponge that never seems to dry. He's got that cold, brittle gem worth 500 gold. In his notes, he's got the blood pail, you know, explaining he could empty its contents to summon the golem, the stats of the golem, how to recharge it, and he also has a note saying he inherited that cold brittle gem. So he's got all that on his character sheet. So with this character here, I think this is pretty good from like a roleplay perspective. It's got some fun gameplay mechanics too, especially with that blood pail. And I think that it would be very easy to roleplay this character, especially his cautious virtue and his nervous vice. Because, you know, do I summon my golem? And if he dies, then I lose 1d4 strength. Do I want to do that or not? I have this fatty gem worth a lot of money. Do I want to spend it or not? Because there's consequences. So it's really easy to go into that cautious and nervous thing because it fits right in. So I thought that was really cool. I think Barnaby is probably one of the weaker characters that... actually, I don't know. Combat-wise, if he had his golem, you could basically just double team people, so he could potentially be strong that way. You could also have it tank a hit or two. It's got 6 hit protection and 13 strength, so it's stronger than he is for sure. But yeah, that's Barnaby. So finally we have Leth. So Leth here is very unique. I'm gonna go through... I'm not gonna do his traits yet. I picked his traits because of what I picked for his Bonekeeper tables. So let's go look at his Bonekeeper choices. So for Leth, for the first table, what did you take from the dead? I picked number 2. A mortal wound from a freed revenant. You were healed, but the disfigurement has made you a pariah. You require neither air nor sustenance, but are still subject to pain and death. Trapped between, the dead see you as one of their own. So basically Leth is undead, which is cool. That's awesome. That's perfect for a Bonekeeper. He can hang out with the homies. But he doesn't have to breathe. He doesn't have to drink. Doesn't have to eat. Probably doesn't have to use the bathroom. I don't know. That's not specified, but I would imagine so. He doesn't have to take potty breaks. But he's also still subject to pain and death. So he can still feel pain. He can still die. And the dead see him as one of his own. So I'm thinking maybe like if he sees a zombie, the zombie's like, whoa, what's up, dude? What's going on? So maybe you can have some cool dialogue options with living dead, undead. I don't know. Could be cool. Maybe if you're creeping through a crypt and you got a ghost there and normally they would attack you, they'd be like, oh, you're not supposed to be here. Maybe you should just go away. This is my territory, guy. I don't know. There's all sorts of stuff you could do with that. So I thought that was really cool. For his second table, I just gave him a pulley. Great for moving gravestones, rocks, or even bodies. So I figure he's got the pulley, he's got the chains. Probably do something with that. I don't know what, but you have options. So that was what I picked for that, and that determined his traits. So let's go take a look at his traits here. So he has a scrawny physique, because he's like, I wanted to put like withered physique, but I decided to just stick with the choices that were given. He's got weathered skin. I wanted to put like gaunt skin, but I don't know if that's the way to describe skin. It's more of like, I guess, gaunt physique. I don't know. You get the idea. He's atrophied. He's basically undead, right? Scrawny physique, weathered skin. He's got filthy hair, a sunken face because he's like undead. He's got a whispery voice. His clothing is rancid, disgusting. His virtue is that he's humble, and his vice is that he's deceitful. And I picked deceitful for his vice because I'm thinking, like, if this guy's undead, he probably has to like be deceitful to disguise himself in some way. I was thinking like Divinity Original Sin 2 with the character Fane, or if you roll an undead character, you have to like cover yourself to make sure like no bones are poking out, because otherwise people get weirded out. So that could be a thing. Maybe you have to keep yourself fully covered, or else people will just freak out and try to kill you because you're like, oh my god, zombie, kill, die, So roleplay perspective, lots of things you could do there. Gameplay perspective, maybe you just get attacked more often, so that's probably not going to be the best. It will be very interesting when you're playing in a party, because then you have that banter with your party members. Maybe they like having a little zombie buddy around. I don't know, could be cool. Let's take a look at what bond I picked for him. So for the bond for Leth, I picked number 6. You inherited an old journal, bound in bark. Each evening its pages are filled with the events of the day, crassly from the journal's perspective. The writing is crude, but accurate. So I'm thinking this could be a really fun bond, because you're like this smelly undead guy, and you've got this journal that catalogs everything you did during the day, but in the worst way possible. So if you go through and read it in the evening, you know, you could have saved someone's life, and it could have just, oh, you stopped someone's death, you atrocious loser. I don't know. Or it could do, like, it's crass. So just blunt, very not politically correct, probably. Lots of different things you could do in there. This is probably one of those things that it would be good to establish with your player and your whole party, your table beforehand, see like what boundaries they are comfortable with, because this is an item I could probably see that could make some people uncomfortable depending on the descriptions you come up with it. So I would caution with this crass journal to make sure that the content that you fill in that journal, the whole party is okay with, right? It's really easy to probably just go, like, I'm thinking like in Critical Role, there was this character, I don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't watched it and they want to do the Critical Role journey and stuff like that, but there's this character in this mythical realm who had a journal, and he was drawing the adventuring party. But he drew them like in a very crass manner. So he gave like the elf lady like huge honkers, and you know, that's the most tame drawing he did. So the table there loved it. It was super funny. I enjoyed it. Some people might not be comfortable with that. So definitely make sure that that whatever you put in that crass journal is something that, you know, won't make waves in your table and make somebody feel uncomfortable or not want to play, because then that really sucks. But yeah, something to keep in mind, but lots of opportunity for hilarity there. I mean, I could picture if I was playing Leth, I would love, like, every night I'd be like, okay, I want to open my journal before I go to bed and just have the warden read to me what it says, right? Or paraphrase it or something, you know. I think that would be really fun. It could be a really fun party tradition to see, hey, Leth, what's in your book, huh? Because it just says the events of the day, not just what you did. Could be what happened to you, what you as a group did. So yeah, it could be a really fun like bonding thing too. But yeah, that's why I picked for bonds. Hey, bonding, cool. Number 6, I think that's a lot of fun. So let's take a look at Leth's character sheet finally. For his stats, the lowest I rolled was a 9. So I figure for Leth, since he's like undead and like withering, he's probably gonna have below average strength. Still has higher strength than Barnaby does though, so got that going for him. So he's got 9 strength. His dexterity is average. He's got 10. You know, even though he's undead, he's still got some moves, still light on his feet. And then for willpower, the highest I roll was 15. I put that in there because, you know, it's got to be a pretty adverse, challenging experience being undead and having to keep going, and you know, whatever mission you're trying to do. I would assume that Leth's overarching story is trying to get this wound fully healed so he's no longer undead. Or, depending on the player's preferences, maybe they like being undead and they just want to eliminate that being able to die part. So maybe they might be trying to become like this lich or something and just like make phylacteries and can resurrect and all this different stuff. I don't know. Whatever you want to do there. I mean, there's definitely room to go either way. Could be good, could be bad. Yeah. For hit protection, I rolled a 2. Bummer. So he's only got 2 hit protection. So between only having 9 strength and 2 hit protection, I think combat-wise, he's a pretty weak character. Definitely don't want him taking hits. You want to be avoiding damage as much as possible. So for his items, he's got the lantern, oil can, the wooden stake, the 10 feet of chains. He's got the pulley and the crash journal. In his notes, he says, I'm sort of undead. I don't need to eat or breathe, but I'm still subject to pain and death. The dead also treat me as one of their own. And he has this journal that he reads that, you know, is the crash journal. So that's Leth. I think he'd be a lot of fun to play. So there you go. There are 3 Bonekeepers. I would say they're all pretty different. I mean, they all have like the same starting gear. They got no armor. They got a wooden stake, lantern, chains, etc. But I think they're all different. I think they're all very different in the way that you would play them, what their ambitions are, how you would role play them, gameplay wise. I mean, so you have quite a few options here, and there are a lot of there's a few more options that I didn't even pick. Like I could have made easily 3 more characters with the Bonekeeper, and they could all be very different. So Bonekeeper is pretty cool. I think like if you were like a more min-max combat character, Bonekeeper's probably not going to be the background for you. But again, Cairn is not just about combat. It's about role-playing. You know, what are your character's thoughts and ambitions? What are their desires? What are their goals? How do they go about that? And in Cairn, you're encouraged to try to like circumvent combat. So maybe if you see a bad guy up ahead, you probably don't want to just charge in and start beating on him, especially if you're Leth, because you're probably kind of weak. But maybe you could take that pulley and chains and, I don't know, like rig up some sort of like trap and then say, hey, fatty, come here. And then he starts running over and you just drop a gravestone or something on him. I don't know. That could be clever. Maybe you could just catch him on fire with your oil can. Then you could throw your lantern at him and catch him on fire. Maybe you might trap him with the chains, and next thing you know, you can just beat on him, and all your attacks are enhanced because he can't fight back. So, different ways to handle it. But there you go. Those are the 3 characters. Let me know your thoughts on Rook, Barnaby, and Leth, and the Bonekeeper background in general. So next, I'll be taking a look at the cut purse, and I think that's going to be a lot of fun. So keep an eye out for that video. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it, and I'll see you in whatever video I make next.